All right. What's up, peoples? We out here with another episode of Go the Mission. And I have to admit, it's a very nice day. Yeah, I'll call it a beautiful day here in Berrien Springs, Michigan, right here from the campus of Andrews University. And it also happens to be the first Sunday of the NFL season. Football is my favorite sport, and as you can see, I'm out here repping my favorite team, the Baltimore Ravens. I was born there, and always grew up with them as my team. But anyways, this seemed like a pretty good time to come in with another episode based on what happened over the last few days. So just to give you some background, every year students go out to serve as missionaries, and with Andrews, when the school year starts again, the return missionaries, we like to have a little gathering, a little re-entry retreat for them. And I was a part of this retreat as the official missions ambassador here at Andrews University. And my task, or my part to play, was to deliver a worship in the evening as kind of encouragement or something, just to give them a little bit to think about going into the school year. And we definitely try to make them feel a little bit more at home, because there's a lot of different factors and culture shock type things, school shock, whatever it might be, that returning students have to face. So just trying to help them to understand that they've got a family, they got some people here that care for them, and we're trying to work together to help them have the best experience integrating back into this typical school life. And it was funny because I ended up getting to the meeting a little bit late, or the event a little bit late, and I picked up someone who needed to go late as well. And on the way, we were talking about purpose and how it's different when you're out there in the field and you have this dedicated idea of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and it's easy to know the reasons you're getting up, who you're getting up for, because it's right there in your face every single day. But for return missionaries who come back to school here and try to get back into this grind, it's often not as clear. And so you have this kind of gap where students are trying to look at what their end goal is going to be and say, okay, well, I'll be able to jump back in on something like purpose when I get to that point right there. But what does that do to the moment where we are right here and right now? I've been back in the States for a couple of years now, and this is something that I've been wrestling with often in my time since being back. But it didn't stop there, because there were a handful of other students that we ended up talking with, and these same themes started entering into the conversation. And I'm listening, and I'm like, man, there's definitely something here worth touching on. And I feel like God inspired me to talk about this particular topic with good reason. I don't believe in coincidences, never have. So the evening came around, and it came time to give the worship, and I started talking about a little bit of Palau experience, of course. And what I noticed is, when I, oh man, there's so much context that I could give you with this, right? So let's go back to my undergrad years at Southern Adventist University, 5-year senior, and I graduated with business administration and was going to focus in accounting. Was definitely all about making the big bucks, and right on the path all the way down the line. Yeah, I love numbers, so it was a good fit for me. But about a month before graduation, the school had hooked up a lot of students with interviews at big companies downtown, and I had mine with an insurance company called Nationwide. Nationwide is on your side. Yes, that very group. And I remember going into that interview, downtown building. It was nice. The elevator was smooth. It was quick going up to the top floors, and getting off the elevator, and I'm following the interviewer around, and I noticed something. It is quiet. It's quiet. And it was too quiet. I'm looking around, you have people looking at multiple screens on their desks, and all you can hear is the clicking and clacking of keyboards. No one is speaking. There's no sound. All you can hear is like the AC fan in the background. That's it. And as we continue to talk, I realized rather quickly that this was not the life I wanted to live. It wasn't for me. And I actually told the interviewer that a few minutes into our conversation, and he said, well, if you're sure, then there's no need to belabor the point. And I said, yeah, I'm sure. So I left, and that was that. But the issue is this is happening a month before graduation, where I'm getting my degree in this very field that apparently I don't want to work in anymore. So what am I going to do? Thankfully, the opportunity came up to go be a missionary. And in an opportunity or in a situation where I didn't have much direction or much idea of where I was going to go, what I was going to do, there was something about that year, something about the opportunity of that missions year, way back in 2010 now, that resonated with me. There was something that I found, something that I identified with, but I couldn't quite put a finger on it. And for the next several years, after being back here in the States and working different jobs here and there, that thing was something I was chasing after and not really being able to zero in on it, not really being able to hone in on what it was. Thankfully, I was able to return to the islands in 2015. And that's when it became abundantly clear over the next 4 years what I had discovered and why I was so in love with the place. I'd found purpose. I found my purpose. In missions, in service, I knew that that's what I was born to do. And man, obviously I loved it. 5 years in total. You guys get that. We'll go into some of the details a little bit later, but the interesting thing is, and this is the area where I connected with the other return SMs, it's like we all felt that way. We all felt like we'd gained something that we didn't have before. And when we came back to Andrews or whatever other schools it might have been, that suddenly it was different. And it's hard to put a finger on the reason why. There's like that gap we talked about earlier of, I had this high point of emphasis on missions and service here, on purpose here, and now I'm doing this so I can get back to a point of getting to that high level of mission and service in the future. But again, the question comes up, what about the here and the now? You know, I asked them the question, how many of you found something special out there? Every hand went up. And immediately after, I asked them, how many of you felt like you lost something when you came back home? Every hand went up. And it's not easy to feel like you had to go in a place so far to get something so fulfilling, and yet you come back to a place that is called home and you end up realizing you felt more at home in the other place. It's interesting. I'm still processing that. It's not easy. But the thought that came to me over the last couple of days is, well, what if that wasn't the peak? Up until I would even say last week, I always viewed my experience in Palau as the peak of my life experience. That was the best thing I've ever done. The greatest thing that I've ever been a part of. But what if it wasn't the peak? What if it was just the beginning? What if it was just a launch pad for something else? Okay, so when I was asked to do this worship, I was kind of all over the place and prayed for a little bit to try to find what would be the most applicable or practical in this situation. There was one story that popped into my mind, and I realized this is a story that's often really overlooked, even though it's mentioned in all four Gospels. You can find it in Matthew 10, Mark 6, Luke 10, and John 10. It's in all four of the Gospels early on. And it's this story about where Jesus is sending out the 12 for the first time. And he sends them out with this great power and this great ability to go and do things that they never thought they'd be able to do. And It's in verse 7 and 8 of Matthew 10 that I'm looking at. And it says, as you go, preach saying this, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So first to share this gospel, and then to do these amazing things: heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Whoa, you're talking about a lot of underqualified people, students early on of Jesus, and he's giving them the ability to go and do this. And wow, what kind of responsibility. I'm sure they didn't even fully understand it at the time, but that wasn't the only thing that he sent them out with. He also sent them out with this caveat. And this caveat is what I believe the entire thing was actually all about. At the end of that verse 8, he says this: freely you have received, freely give. Freely you have received, freely give. And I realized that is the message that is the same for us. See, for us as missionaries, we received something here that inspired us to go out to give to the people in the places where we chose to go serve. And then we received something from there, and we bring it back here to give and to share with the people back here at home. Freely we have received, freely give. And the thing is, that doesn't just apply to missionaries. If we're people who claim to be followers of Jesus, then we're acknowledging that we've received something from him. But the question is, the command went out: freely you have received, freely give. Are we sticking with just the freely receiving part and forgetting the freely giving part? Or are we reserving what we do share for getting something for it in return? And because we don't see the value or how we get anything back from what we give, we keep it to ourselves. Freely you have received, freely give. The disciples, they return back so hyped up. They're telling Jesus, wow, we cast out these demons, we healed the sick. Everything that Jesus gave them power to do, they were doing it. And they were so hyped and so excited about it. But Jesus, his response didn't match their enthusiasm. In fact, he kind of tells them, hey, yeah, I hear you, but I've seen some things that you've never seen. I've seen things and experienced things on a level that you have no idea of. And we get to see firsthand through the rest of the Gospels just how little the disciples really understood about the whole big picture, because they continue to get trained by Jesus throughout the rest of the story of the Gospels. We continue to see them having these clueless moments where they're asking questions that we look at now with the knowledge and perspective that we have and say, how would somebody who was right there with Jesus have this kind of a question? Like, these guys didn't have it all figured out. Essentially, you had people who were not even the best of the best, not even the most knowledgeable, who were given this power, but it was for a purpose to set them up for something to come. That moment for the disciples was not the peak of their experience, even though they felt that it was. It was a launch pad for something that was supposed to happen in the future. It was just the beginning for something to come. And one of the ways that I find it's so evident that the disciples didn't get it and that they missed out on, well, I'm not going to say missed out on, because the story happened the way it was supposed to happen. But one of the ways that we really see that they're clueless and they're living in this idea, not of what they freely received, but with this mentality of what they believe they've lost, is with Jesus himself. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. First, in Gethsemane. What happened with the disciples when Jesus was arrested? Gone. You hear a little story about a man who ran away and left his clothes behind. Second, at the cross, where were the disciples while Jesus was on the cross? Dying. The majority of them were not anywhere to be found. And then third, at the ascension, what is the response of the disciples to Jesus leaving them. And again, giving them something, making sure that they receive something before he goes, but their perspective focus on the loss. What is their response? They go and hide in an upper room. They're scared. They're living in a mentality of what they've lost, not really fully aware or embracing that which they have freely received. But you know something? The mission and the purpose didn't change. The same thing that Jesus wanted the disciples to understand back then was the same thing that he needed them to actualize in this moment here. Freely you have received, freely give. And once the disciples realized what Jesus was trying to freely give them in the form not only of the gospel, but in the Holy Spirit, they changed the world. They went out with power, not just to heal the sick and to perform these miracles, but to show people that we've received something, and this is something that's transformed us, and we want to give that to you as well. That was the mission of the disciples then. That is the mission of Christ's followers now. Go ye therefore, right? Oh, they did. They most definitely did. And they did it freely. They realized that it was time to share all the things that they had freely received. It was time to freely give. And as we go out and as we come back in, as we exist in this moment here and now, this is our mission. This is our purpose. That's what it is that Jesus calls us to do, not just to perform the great miracles and to see all these amazing things happen, but simply to understand, become more aware of what we have received so that we can give it as well. You know, I get down to the end of this thought here and I'm left with a couple questions for reflection. I have to think of what is it exactly that I have received? What was it that I received here before I left to go be a missionary? What was it that I received that I wanted so much to go and share? And what is it about the experience that I had out there? What did I receive being out there that makes me want to talk about it all the time and share it so much here? And then I have to ask myself the question, well, how can I share those things? The podcast is an obvious manifestation of that. But when I think of the people, the nature, the experiences, the things that I was privileged to go through in my time out there, that's something that was given to me freely, and I want to share that. But again, it's not just for missionaries, because each and every one of you has received something here before you even go. Are you aware of it? And do you realize that the command is not just to freely receive, but also to freely give? I'd encourage you to take a little bit of time and think about those things, because I can guarantee you, as a follower of Christ, the inspiration and the encouragement is there the same way for his followers today as it was back then. The mission hasn't changed. Our purpose hasn't changed. It might look different, and we may have different majors and different fields of studies and emphasis that we pursue it in, but the mission and the purpose is still the same. Freely you have received, freely give. I'll leave you with that for now. We'll be back for more. The message yet to come. Hey, I want to thank you for taking some time to listen to this episode of Go the Mission. And it'd be awesome if you didn't just like this, but share it with somebody else so we can continue to help the message get out there. Follow Ngoriakul, that's Ngoriiakl, on YouTube and Instagram. Once again, that is Ngoriiakl on YouTube and Instagram, and look for Go the Mission on any of your podcast platforms. Help the movement to grow. It doesn't cost you a thing to share this with somebody, but you might get a little bit more in return than you thought possible. And as always, to exist, it's not enough. our mission and our purpose proves that well enough for us. We out here to be out here. So until next time, let it do what it do, baby.